you, sir. Bonjour, bonjour, good morning. Yeah, so it's going to be in English. Sorry about that. We are going to talk a little bit about the AI paradox, right? AI has given us tremendous gifts, and it's the gifts that keep on giving. They give, but there are a lot of challenges involved with AI, right? Not just generative AI and ChatGPT, which everybody is very familiar with, hopefully by now, but also just AI in general. You know, AI has been part of the cybersecurity landscape for over a decade at least, right? We're talking about the attack surface. A lot of individuals are interested in what AI can do for you, but what does AI open as far as vulnerabilities and attack surface? And what does that mean to us in real life, right? One thing is getting hacked, another thing is getting squashed by machinery in a factory that's operated by AI or robotic surgery. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about what it means for defenses, for cyber defenses, and a little bit on regulatory legislation. Everyone is very familiar with the EU AI Act, so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So let's discuss what the gifts that AI has given us. The gift of creation, right? We can create things that didn't exist before without having human intervention. We can generate code, detection engineering, we can summarize timelines, create summaries of things that are happening based on tremendous amount of data so that humans don't have to assimilate that and translate that themselves. It's also given us the gift of interaction, right? We can get step-by-step guidance on what it is that we should be doing next and what it is that the next relatable or correct steps are to take during an incident and investigation. Also, who likes to document? Nobody likes to document. So AI hopefully can document for us. And probably the most powerful is prediction, especially when talking about cyber defense, right? We can, based on a tremendous amount of data and activities that have happened in the past, we can have the generative AI and large language models predict what attacker activity looks like and predict what the next remediation action should be, right? So behind every or most generative AI solutions are large language models. And there are a lot of challenges with large language models that most people, if they interact and they use it on a regular basis, are familiar with. Lack of repeatability. How many times can you ask ChatGPT the same question and get the same response? 0. Right? Every time, and how do we test stuff? Well, we test stuff to see if it works by doing it over and over and getting the same response. Well, not with generative AI, not with large language models. What about transparency? Does everyone know how ChatGPT works? No. Much less what the underlying models actually do, where the data comes from, how it learns its interactivity. These are challenges that are not directly apparent to us. Versioning. How often do we have to update our large language model, right? We've seen OpenAI and ChatGPT release a couple versions. We're on 4. something. One of the things that is very difficult to operationalize as an organization implementing your own large language model is figuring out how to maintain the versions and when is the right time to update that version and how and for what reason. Data privacy. Everything you type into a generative AI model stays in the generative AI model. It's like the internet, it's like Las Vegas, right? What happens there stays there. Unfortunately, other people can also access it, right? Prompt engineering. So how many times do you know what it is that you're asking for? And then if you ask it in slightly a different way, it's going to give you a completely different response. And accuracy. Hallucinations, anybody? Right? I have them every time I try to implement a large language model. So if you do not already have MLOps in your organization, machine learning operations, if you're not familiar with how AI works, there's some fundamental things that you need to really take into consideration. LLM ops is the next evolution in implementing AI, generative AI, within a private or public organization. Right? How much does it cost? Cost is a tremendous factor. Deploying the right model. Do you deploy a model, or do you just use APIs to connect to and from a publicly available model? Right? Do you license that, or do you build your own? Do you use open source model? Right? How do you fine tune this model? A lot of times, for example, in cybersecurity, if you ask a question to ChatGPT and say, am I being attacked right now? How does that model know that you're talking about a cyber attack and not being, hijacked on an airplane or bus or at the street corner, right, held up for your money? So it's very difficult to really understand or provide the knowledge base required for a large language model to be able to understand the context of which you are asking. So that's a little bit of the challenges, a little bit just a quick overview of generative AI. So we know AI introduces a new attack surface, right? Social engineering, deep fakes, these are real, these are happening, and these are fooling most of us on a daily basis, right? We have seen quite a few monetary losses based on social engineering that is sophisticated enough to use deep fakes, both visual, video, as well as voice. In the US, we just had our president's voice, imitated by an AI and robocalling half an entire state in the United States. We've also had presidents claim victory in an election with a deep fake AI video, right? So these are things that are happening on a daily basis. What about these attacks? So are these happening for real? Are they available in the wild? Yes, right? So DeepLocker is an example of targeted identification, both voice and or image recognition, right? So what if, I don't know if everyone remembers those old school logic bombs, right? An administrator gets fired and they leave a bomb or they leave some malware to go off 2 weeks after his last day, and then all the backups are deleted. Right? What if you can create malware that will specifically target an individual's face or an individual's voice? This is some scary stuff. We've also seen, for example, Black Mamba, that is actually generating unique attack code based on every single instance that it runs. When it's running, actually known good binaries. So you run your regular Notepad++, your command prompt, PowerShell, and you're running these regular, authorized, necessary administrative tools in your operating system, and that can kick off polymorphic code that goes out to OpenAI on the fly, generates unique malware code, and drops a payload in your system. So another one, and we'll talk a little bit about Malgan, or generative adversarial networks. Generative adversarial networks sounds really cool, sounds kind of complex, but it's very, very simple. You keep feeding the model examples, and that model basically decides, is that good or bad, right? But what if you keep feeding the model malware, you inject noise into that malware to modify the code, and until that model does not detect that it is malware, then you do not deploy the code. So if the malware is being detected as bad, you don't deploy. The minute that model says, oh yeah, this is good, okay, well then you deploy that malware code because you've sufficiently fooled the model into seeing malware as good. What kind of impact does this have in real life, right? There's certain things, there's certain well-known risks that on a daily basis we want to avoid, right? One of those well-known risks, obviously, is harm to people. You don't want people to get hurt based on, the activities that you're doing. You don't want an artificial intelligence operated robot to fall on someone's head, or even worse, robotic surgery in the middle of an operation, be hijacked and cause major physical harm. Harm to your organization, where is well known, right? Brand reputation. These are things that can seriously impact business operations. It can determine the effectiveness of a breach, right? And you have harm to the ecosystem. Everybody wants to be green nowadays. Everybody is concerned with the ecosystem. They're concerned as to whether, you're going to be able to have some kind of impact on the global financial supply chain. All of these things, natural resources, these are all things that can very significantly and quickly be impacted by artificial intelligence gone rogue, right? So what are some examples of this? Cyber physical systems, industry 4.0 and IoT, right? This is happening all over the place, and it is AI enabled already. These are real world implications that can impact people, businesses, and ecosystems. Digital twins, probably the coolest thing that I talk about. So digital twins, we all have a digital twin. That's our identity on the internet. Right? What activities do we perform on the internet? Okay, everything, right? But what about digital twins? They're extremely effective. For example, in healthcare, with a digital twin of an individual, you can predict a prognosis. You can determine what the best available treatment for a particular ailment is in that particular person, right? Individualized healthcare. What if that is attacked? What if that is hijacked? And what if that gives you the prediction of a wrong medication to give it to an individual? Who here has heard of Neuralink? Okay, so if a chip implanted in your brain, connected to your spinal cord, does not scare you, that is something that has tremendous impact. I keep thinking of like the Manchurian Candidate or those types of things where it's like, you say a word and automatically someone just starts taking rogue actions. It's like a secret spy movie. Having something implanted in your brainstem is, needless to say, scary. But what about, and that's still a little bit ways off, but what about defibrillators? I mean, that, protects the way your heart beats. My mother-in-law has a defibrillator. Every time she goes to the doctor, she gets checked by a machine. It's not like they open her up and look to see if the defibrillator is still working, right? All of that has implication in medical care and in human safety. Supply chains. We saw the issue with the coronavirus and the pandemic. We had major supply chains issues across the world. That can be significantly impacted by AI gone rogue as well. And so when is it that a human behaves and acts better than a machine? And what things can a machine do better than a human ever can, right? Obviously, I would not trust a machine to have any kind of intuition, to understand ethical considerations, to be creative and just make up stuff that is outside of the box, right? By definition, AI is a box. It's a box that we put things in and it spits things out. What it is good at, and what we absolutely are and should continue to leverage machines for, are data analysis of large, potentially significant sized data, classification and clustering, understanding what that data is telling us in a way that humans would take forever to figure out, and machines can do it very, very quickly. Summarization, generalization, these are things that we have to be careful, right? The machine does not isolate man from the great problems of nature. This is something that is significant and very important to keep in mind. So, that being said, we want to use AI as cybersecurity defense. We want it to be autonomous. We want it to be able to be strategic. We want it to be intelligent, obviously, but we want to automate. Automate, 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 right? Anything that we can automate, and it will give us an edge on the attackers, right? Things like extracting indicators of compromise, correlating data across many points that would otherwise be foreign to us or we would be unable to do. Predict behavior and detect anomalies within a system. These are incredibly important things that we need to be able to do. We need to be smart, precise, and broad. Precise because we need to be right. We cannot be wrong, right? So we need a high level of accuracy and precision. You know, there's a couple of factors when figuring out how effective an AI is, and if anyone's implemented, you know, chat bots or any type of machine learning or predictive analysis with any sort of basic data science, you know that there's always a % accuracy, right? And normally you start with like 50% accuracy or so. And if you're there, it's actually not so bad. But it's like flipping a coin, right? It's not until you get into the 80, 90 percentile that you're like, okay, I can trust this model a little bit more. And wide area defense, it needs to be hooked into everything. That's actually a quote from the Terminator movies. You know, I used to have a picture of Skynet there, and everyone's like, well, isn't Skynet bad? I was like, well, it turned bad. It went rogue. But in reality, Skynet was a defense system, right? And it was hooked into everything. And unfortunately, today, we have AI pretty much hooked into everything. So, you know, AI is not just generative AI. It's not just ChatGPT, right? It starts with different areas, and they build on each other. One of the things that we implement is large language models for the purpose of generative AI. However, machine learning is extremely effective in classifying and clustering data to understand how, specifically with our platform, is to understand whether it's good or bad. And that gives us the ability to very quickly, at machine speed, understand whether not just a particular or atomic item is good or bad, but does the behavior or the pattern predict a malicious outcome? And in that sense, we can connect these things together. And so, in real world, in practical terms, how can AI really help a security operations center or help individuals make an impact on their daily work activities, right? Better understand the threats, up-level your analyst activities, understand, make faster, smarter decisions, and automate everything. So some of the things that we should be considering and thinking about when we're implementing artificial intelligence in cybersecurity. What is the purpose? What are we trying to do here? Well, we're trying to apply this machine learning at scale, at internet scale, right? We want to predict the next breach, understand what it is that might happen based on the story of events that have gotten us to this point. Of course, we need to prioritize these critical defenses, right? We need to understand what is critical, where does the risk to our organization, to our bodies, to our supply chains, to our ecosystem, where do they exist? And let's go mitigate that. Let's prioritize what it is that we're trying to affect. Of course, we want to correlate patterns. We want to understand what's happening over here and what's happening over there and understand, make those connections that we would otherwise, as humans, be unable to do so. We want to modify and adapt our responses, right? If attacker A does B, we want to do C. If attacker A does C, then we want to do B. How do we predict that? And how do we do that effectively, consistently, and accurately? And of course, wouldn't it be nice if we can just have AI automate every investigation, remediate every problem we have, and just go on vacation, go on holiday, and not even worry about it, right? Regulatory legislation. Why is this important? Well, there are concerns. There are concerns when implementing artificial intelligence. Is it trustworthy? Does it maintain our privacy? Is it ethical? These are things that should consistently be on everyone's mind when implementing AI in any one of its flavors. This is, I think, near and dear to the French people. I know you guys put up a blockade on this for months, and rightly so. We agree. You know, it is important, 100%, to risk or determine the risk of an AI, potential backfiring of an AI, and then understand how it is that we're going to regulate that. The problem is that regulation does indeed stifle innovation. So we have to be careful with just how much we regulate. So I'll leave you with this. AI obviously has immense potential for attacking. It significantly enhances our cybersecurity capabilities. It will continue to advance our defensive AI. And without collaboration and without humans involved, we're going to have a very hard time staying safe. With that, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. My name is Albert. Thank you so much.